Hi guys, this is Chris Monk, owner of Highline Guitars, and you're watching. In episode 4 of the From the Luthier's Workbench, I began a series explaining how I like to apply one of my favorite finishes to an electric guitar, and it's basically a wiping oil-based varnish. A lot of people call it a Danish oil finish. And if you've ever seen Danish oil products at your local hardware store, that's kind of what I'm talking about. However, Danish oil isn't a brand. Danish oil is a term used to describe an oil-based wiping varnish, and that's what I'm going to be applying. So in the last episode, what I talked about was the process of prepping all the wood in the guitar to get it ready for the finish. And I started by sanding the whole surface with 120 grit sandpaper to remove tool marks and scratches, and then I worked my way all the way up to 220 grit, and that's where I'm at right now. Both the body and the neck have all been sanded to 220 grit, so I'm ready to do the next step. And the next step is to fill some of the grain and pores of the woods that I used. Now, what exactly am I talking about when I say fill the grain and pores? Well, this guitar uses two different kinds of wood. I've got African mahogany for most of the base of the body, and then on the top I use a book-matched maple. Mahogany is a wood that has a very open structure, which means the grain and the pores are open. So if you move your fingernail across the surface of the wood, you can actually feel the grain and the pores. Maple, on the other hand, is a closed structure, so if you run your fingernail across it, it's very, very smooth. Now, with the mahogany being open grain, no matter how much you sand it, you cannot get it absolutely smooth. You can always feel that open pore structure. So what I need to do is I need to fill that. And there's a lot of commercially made grain fillers on the market that you can use. But since I'm going to be making my own wiping varnish, I already have the ingredients to make my own grain filler. So that's what I'm going to do in this episode. The recipe for my Danish oil varnish mix is equal parts of mineral spirits, boiled linseed oil, and an oil-based polyurethane. But for the grain filler, I don't need the boiled linseed oil. I just need the mineral spirits and the polyurethane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix roughly equal parts. Now, I've already got some in here, so I'm just going to add to it. And really, I just kind of eyeball it. You don't have to be exact. You just want roughly a 50-50 mix of the two. Now, this is a Minwax oil-based polyurethane, and it's a gloss sheen. You can get satin and semi-gloss as well, but for this guitar I wanted to use a gloss, so that's what I'm going with. And that should be about right. To mix it up, I use these popsicle sticks. You can get these at any arts and crafts store. I think they even sell them at Walmart. All right. And to apply it, I am going to use a paper towel. I recommend using Viva paper towels because they produce, or they leave very little lint on the surface. So we just want to soak it up, and we want to get a pretty good amount on here. And we'll start with the back. Really get it good and drenched. And it also does a nice job of darkening in the wood and really popping out that grain nicely. Okay, now I have to work it into the wood using, I'm using 3M's, it's a wet dry sandpaper. This is a 320 grit, and you have to use a wet dry. You can't just use regular sandpaper. Now what happens is as I'm sanding it, is I'm working up wood dust, and the wood dust mixes with the mineral spirits and the polyurethane, and it will start to form kind of a sludgy, slurry, pasty mix. And that's what is going to pack into the wood grain and fill both the grain and the pores. And it takes a little bit of work to get that going, but you'll start to see it as it fills the grain in, as it starts to work up that sawdust mix. And you just want to keep working around. And if it starts to clog the sandpaper, just dip it into the... Oh, and I should mention, the block that I'm using is just one of those cheap school pink erasers that you can get at pretty much any school supply section of your local grocery store. But you can start to see how, you can see the dust is starting to mix with the mineral spirits and the polyurethane. Now once I'm done, the mineral spirits will evaporate out of off the surface, and it will leave just the polyurethane, which will dry, and it acts like a binder and will glue the wood dust that I've generated into the pores, and that prevents it from coming out later on when we start applying more finish. Now here's another tip. If you can get your hands on some of this H. Balin pumice stone, this is a great way to fill grain. And what pumice stone is it's volcanic rock that's been crushed to a fine powder. And in this case, I'm using the 4F grade, which is their finest powder. And what you do is, all you have to do is take your mineral spirits and polyurethane mix and just completely coat the surface, get it good and wet. And then you just sprinkle some of this powder. And as you can see, it looks like flour. It's white. However, as soon as it starts to mix in with the mineral spirits and polyurethane, it turns clear. But as you continue to work it, the pumice, which is abrasive, quickly begins to work up sanding dust, which packs into the grain and fills up the pores so that you get that really nice smooth surface. What I'm going to do in the next episode is I'm going to show you the techniques that I like to use for applying a color tint to the flamed maple that I used on the top. And this is one of the control cavity, and that'll kind of give you an idea of what it's going to look like. So stay tuned. So one other thing I should mention is whenever you're using an oil-based finish, you've got to properly dispose of the rags to avoid the potential for spontaneous combustion. So what I do is I lay the rags out on a concrete floor, make sure that they aren't touching each other, and then I'll just let them sit there until they're completely dry. That usually takes a day or so. And then once they're fully dry, I'll take the rags, I'll put them into an old coffee can, fill it with water, cap it, and then that's how I dispose of it.